My hunch is when the disciples asked for that time with Jesus, that wasn't the response they were expecting to get back, a parable of that nature. It's a tough parable. My dad has a Bible study group he's a part of. They meet on Thursday mornings. Sunday school hours, just not enough time for them. They like to set aside a Thursday morning time, and that group's grown to be a substantially big group. And they call it Digging Deeper. And they like to take Bible texts, and they like to, as they call it, digging deeper into the text. So Thursday evenings, it's not uncommon, I get a call from my dad. And it's not the type of call that says, hey, how you doing? Checking in on you. How are the kids? How are the grandkids? That's not the call. He doesn't even start there. John, you got to explain this to me. That's generally the way it starts. And this Thursday was no different when he gave me a call. He said, John, you got to explain this to me. I said, well, what is that? Well, I said, what did y'all study today? He said, we studied that parable of the talents. And we spent 2 hours basically defending Jesus. We couldn't figure that story out for love nor money, and we know we don't need to defend Jesus, but we found ourselves doing it, and then we got frustrated because we know there's something he's trying to tell us in this story we're not getting, and we need to get it. I said, well, what's your frustration? He said, well, first of all, this text is so out of character. The story that Jesus tells is so out of character for him. In what way? Well, he always lifts up the little guy as the hero. He always takes the least, the last, the least likely. He always makes them the hero in the story. Not in this story. In this story, he makes him the worst villain. I mean, John, think about the other stories. You hear the story of the prodigal son. I mean, if anybody should have been condemned, he should have been condemned. But not in Jesus' stories. He's the hero. The party gets thrown for him. And what about the Good Samaritan? Everybody hated Samaritans. And to the audience that Jesus spoke to, he made the Samaritan the hero. What about the woman, the widow who put in the little bit of money in the offering horn? You couldn't even hear the tinkle of the coin going down the mite into the horn when everyone else was rattling their change into that thing. And yet Jesus makes her the model of stewardship. The woman caught in the act of adultery. Now there's a good one for you. The woman caught in the act of adultery, she was the one that he used to embarrass the religious leaders of the day. We're not getting this story, and there's a reason he tells the story this way, and we need to know what that reason is. Now, give me an explanation. I said, well, that's quite a tall order, Dad. I said, but you have reminded me that Jesus takes a common story form and turns it upside down. You know the story form. Once upon a time, there were 3 servants. One was given a big bag of money, one a medium bag of money, a third a smaller bag of money. Same story form as once upon a time there were 3 brothers. Once upon a time there were 3 sisters. Once upon a time there were 3 little pigs. It's the same story form. But this time Jesus turns it upside down because in that story form, it's always the third one that gets it right? But he turns this one upside down. Why does he do that? Of course, Dad, that's precisely why I'm calling. Well, Dad, let's think a minute. Who's he talking to? Who's his audience? He's talking to the disciples. They asked for this private conversation. He's talking to them. So this parable wasn't for the world at large. It's for his followers. By the way, that's you and me. So what's he trying to say? He knows this well. He knew those 12 well. And he knew when he told that parable which one of those 3 servants they would most likely identify with. I know which one I identify with. I don't identify with the 5-talent guy. I'm not a Mozart. I'm not a LeBron James. I'm not a Churchill. I'm not a 5-talent guy. I don't even identify with a 2-talent person. I mean, 2-talent person, in my mind, would be someone who'd create some kind of vaccine to get rid of all this virus stuff. The 2-talent person would be the one who'd come up with an economic plan that would save some locality or some nation or some company. They'd be the ones that come up with all these great economic plans. They'd be someone who could come up with a cure for cancer. That's who I think of when I think of the 2-talent people. They may not make all the world difference that some of the 5-talent people do, but those 2-talent ones make a real contribution to society. I'm just that 1-talent person. I'm the one that's going to live an ordinary life, a simple life, and I'm quite comfortable with that. I'm just an ordinary person. I'm that 1-talent person that Jesus is talking about in the story. Dad said, well, I identify with that myself, be quite honest. I said, Dad, that's where most of us are. And Jesus knew exactly what we would be tempted to do. He knew we would be tempted because we're just ordinary, plain folk living ordinary lives. He knew we'd be tempted to think we're not going to make much difference in this world. And Jesus, in this parable, wants you and I to know nothing could be further from the truth. What Jesus is telling us, it's people like you, followers like you, ordinary people, people who live ordinary lives. It's people like you that's going to make all the difference in my kingdom. By what you do or by what you do not do, it will make all the difference in my world. I am counting on people like you. 12 fishermen, a tax collector. I'm counting on you. I was riding home and listening to NPR, and Terry Gross was interviewing Marianne Williams, one of my favorite gospel singers. She's that black gospel singer that when she sings, and I listen to her tapes when I'm coming and going, she does that foot stomping, hand clapping, gotta get up and move kind of gospel music. It takes me 2 hours to go to bed when I get home after listening to her music. She's just so full of energy. It takes a while just to climb down from that place where she takes you. I was listening to the interview and I found myself turning the volume up while listening to the interview because Terry Gross even said, Miriam, how is it that a woman with such a booming singing voice as yours has such a soft speaking voice? And Miriam just laughed and said, I don't know, it's been that way all my life. But give me that singing. Well, Miriam, what happens to you when you sing? What happens to me? Spirit of God, honey. Spirit of God takes a small voice like mine and makes it big. Takes a shy person like me and makes them bold. Takes an ordinary life like mine and turns it into the light of the world. What happens to me? Spirit of God, honey. You know, God's still in that business of taking people like us and taking voices that we don't think we have much of. Makes it big, touches hearts, takes lives like ours, the shy, genteel Virginians we tend to be, gives us boldness, takes shy people and ordinary lives like yours and mine, and for somebody that could be just the very light that they need to see their way by. God's still in that business. And the story goes on. Master comes and there's 3 servants, and 3 servants own absolutely not a thing in this world. They're slaves. And the master comes and he doles out 3 bags of money. To one he gives 5 talents, to one he gives 2, and to one he gives 1. And he does it in the currency of the day in terms of a talent. It's the money that he gives them. Have you noticed that in Jesus' parables, 20 of the 25 parables Jesus tells, money's at the center of that? You do know why. Because money functions as a parable of our lives. What we do or don't do with it. It is the parable of our lives. So Jesus tells these parables with money at the center of them. And in this parable, he gives them each in the currency of a talent. Now, a talent is a tremendous amount of money. It's not a small amount of money. It's where the English word for talent comes from when we've all been given talents. There's such precious value to that. We took the value of that coin and apply it to gifts that we have, that are personal gifts that we get to exercise. It is a tremendous amount of money. To the best of my ability, do you know what a talent would be equivalent to in today's U.S. currency? It'd be equivalent to over 500,000 US dollars. So can you imagine owning nothing in the world and the master comes and gives you 5 of those? That's $2.5 million. I don't know about you. That's a good day. I could use a day or two like that. To the one he gave 2 talents, that's a cool $1 million. To have nothing and to leave the end of that day with $1 million in your hands, what an incredible gift that is. Even to the third one, it's $500,000. Now let's pause here for station identification. Jesus, why do you tell this story with such extravagance? What is the point of that? Why did it have to be such a huge amount in the story? You know what Jesus would answer? I've given you a bag. Open your bag. Reach your hand into that bag. You know what you'll pull out? You'll pull out your life. You didn't buy that. You didn't earn that. You don't deserve that. I gave that to you. That's my gift to you. Reach in your bag. You know what you'll pull out? You'll pull out precious time with which to live that life. You can't buy that. You can't earn that. You don't deserve that. I gave you that gift even this morning when you climbed out of bed. Reach in your bag. You know what you'll pull out. Family that loves you. You ever start to wonder why? I do. They love you anyway. You can't buy that. You don't deserve it. You can't earn it. It's a gift. It's a gift to you. Reach in your bag, pull it out. You've got this incredible church. You've got this incredible place and beautiful place to live. And reach in that bag and pull out, you've got a mission in your life, a call in your life, a purpose for your life. You can't buy any of that. You don't deserve any of that. I give that to you. That's my gift every day. You are living richly blessed lives. Please don't let the world distract you from seeing that. And the story goes on. Master comes back, and the first 2 have doubled. They've invested what was given them, and they've doubled it, and they're bringing it excitedly back to the master. Where I had 5, now I have 10. Where I had 2, and now I have 4. Well done, good and faithful servants. In that you've been faithful in this, I'll put you in charge of so much more. Enter now into the joy of your master. Well, right about now, that third one, I don't know if you've ever been in school and you took a test only to realize after the test, as the teacher was reviewing things, that you'd really messed up bad. You get that little knot at the pit of your stomach. Have you ever been there? Been there a number of times myself. And you go, oops, got that one wrong. That's where the third one is right now. And does what we always do. First thing he does, he starts blaming. You're a cruel master. You sow where you didn't toss anything. You expect things that are way beyond what should be expected. Immediately goes into a whole pattern of blaming and self-defense. Do you know what's happening here? Why Jesus tells a story where this is upsetting? Because this one was living a richly blessed life and refused to live that way. This one buried what was given him. And all the master loves to do with what he's given his servants is to watch them grow it, is to watch them invest it back into the world, to watch them spread it. This is what the master enjoys. And when we bury it, do you know what we do? We deny this world God's grace. When we bury what's been given us, we deny the world God's love. They don't hear it. They continue to live in the darkness because they've been denied the light. And God is saying, and Jesus in this story, that's the one thing that God cannot tolerate. He so richly blessed his children that he wants them to take what's been given them and invest it back deep into the world again. He didn't give us the gift of our lives just to be safe with it. He didn't give us the gift of our church just to be safe with it. He gave us the gift of each to invest it and risk it back into the world again as he did his son. That's what he wants from us. That's what will change this world. That's what's going to turn the tide of things, is God's people being God's people invested in the world again. Boy, did I see this happen. When I was president of Baptist World Alliance, I got invited to go to a church in Ireland. Been wanting to go to this church, heard about this church, and finally was able to go. It's a church downtown Belfast. It's a church that all the community around it had moved away. 1,000 stories we have of those in the U.S. Everyone had moved out to the suburbs or far, far away. Those attending the church had dwindled down to just a fateful few left in the life of the church. And what had moved in all around the church were nightclubs and bars in that part of Belfast. So every Friday night and Saturday night, that place was just popping with young people and young adults, just thousands of them. And it grew so fast, the city managers had not planned well enough. There weren't enough public restrooms to handle the crowds that gathered downtown on Friday and Saturday nights. So guess what became the public restroom? The front yard of the church. And so the church, when they gathered on Sunday morning, had to have a committee go and clean the church property before worship could happen. How would you like to serve on that committee? How'd you like to be responsible for the one to form that committee? So the deacons do what deacons do. They met and they tried to come up with a plan to solve that issue. And their plan was to have an architectural design that was complementary to the church. They found some dollars in reserve and they took the plan to the church in business session to build a wall around the church. And they presented their plan and were about ready to vote in business session when Sean, the oldest member of the congregation, sitting in the very back, raised his hand. Sean, you got something you want to say? Wouldn't you know his name would be Sean? He said, sure do. Seems to me we don't need no wall. What we need are more toilets. Why aren't we spending that money building more toilets? Well, Sean, who's going to clean those things 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? That's when all the crowds are here. Well, I'm not sleeping well these days. I'll take a 2 o'clock cleaning shift. Well, the lady spoke up and she said, well, you know, Sean, I don't sleep well either. I think I'll take a 2 o'clock cleaning shift. And you know, before that evening was over, they had filled the entire cleaning roster and decided to build more restrooms. I went to that church and preached. Do you know what time the worship service was? It was 3 o'clock in the morning. 300 and some young people were gathered in that sanctuary. I asked one of them, "Why are you here? Why aren't you at the bars?" "Well, I had to go to the bathroom. So I got in a long line. It's the only place you can find a bathroom around here. And the lines were way outside the building. So some older gentleman, I think his name was Sean, came up and we got to know each other. And he found out my mother was in the hospital with stage 4 cancer. And, he visited her. And he waits for me on Friday nights. And he pulls me aside and we have a little prayer for my mom. And I realized that of all the places, that's really the place right now I want to be. So richly blessed, so ordinary. Will you invest it for me, for the kingdom? I decided I had to change the end of this story for my sake. Hope you don't mind if I do. I'll tell you how I ended it. Don't usually do that with Jesus' stories, but I needed this for my own understanding. So I rewrote the ending. This is how I rewrote it. This master came and gave the money and gave the talents, and the first 2 invested in everything, doubled their investment, same part. But the third one, instead of burying the money in my ending, I had him invest it in a halfway house for those addicted to opioids. $500,000 will get you started, but it won't last long. Wasn't long, maybe a year into it, that $500,000 was totally gone. Drained every penny. The master comes back, and the first 2, they give their doubled amount back to the master. The third one comes up this time in this story and says, "Master, I am so sorry, but I lost every single penny that you gave me. I don't have anything to give back to you. I am so, so sorry." You know what I think the master would say? "Well done, good and faithful servant. In that you have been faithful in this, I will put you in charge of so much more. Enter into the joy of your master." It's not about success. It's about faithful risking, giving back into the world what God has so richly blessed us with, and transforming lives, risking our love, risking our life. May we pray. Father, thank you for this private time with you to remind us who we are and what we're supposed to be doing and what could come of it. Be with each one of us now as we let your word speak to our hearts. For I pray this in Christ's name. Amen.